New South Wales Positive Rugby Foundation, and we've teamed up with Batyr to get the conversation started about mental health.
I thought I'd invite Sharni and Hugh to just share a little bit more about themselves and their journeys. And if we hear something in there that interests us, we can have a bit of a think about what kind of questions we might like to ask them as well. So Hugh, I haven't told you that I'm going to ask you to go first, but here we are now. I would love for you to share just a little bit about yourself and your journey so people know what they can ask you a bit more about.
For sure. So I finished school at the end of last year, obviously pre-COVID, so we all had our formals and our graduations and everything, and then going through into the start of this year, like obviously great period of like free time when you leave school, like you haven't started uni yet, which is like pre-season for rugby, so I was doing obviously what I love to do, and then so it's all going really well. Uni was about to start up. The Australian under-20 side is being selected. We had a few camps, and then we went to a camp where everything was normal, and then in the 6 or 8 days that we were there, by the time we got back, like we had about 2 days, and then everything went into lockdown. So the under-20s World Cup got cancelled. We missed out on the uni scene. So obviously when you leave school, it was a bit weird going from, because I was full boarder at Joey's, it was weird going from like living with probably about 150 boys in the boarding house to all of a sudden like they've gone home, watch some cricket, and you're trying to meet new people, and obviously you get that a bit through rugby, but at the same time, like uni's a great area for that to happen when you've got new classes and all these different activities that you have at uni. But with that, obviously just going straight to online, you miss out on meeting all those people, and then you've got to adapt to the online scenario. And I know obviously lots of Year 12 students will be able to relate to how difficult it can be, especially if you're very much an in-person learner like myself. Having to study at home in isolation by yourself, and having that motivation, I found it very challenging to stay focused. And then on the sporting side of it, like obviously for someone who spends hours a day with their best mates who they play footy with, it's very difficult to go and live, obviously with my family back on my farm, but just like finding motivation and struggling to stay motivated to train every day, to eat properly. So I struggled with that, and I spoke to my parents about it and my family about it, and we came up just like with some little things, like a daily routine that I'd do. So I'd get up, just do the little things. I'd make my bed, eat breakfast, like eat at certain times, to tidy my room, just keep like that routine, studying for uni, keep that routine that would get me through the day. I'd train at certain hours and stuff. And then obviously that got me through. I found that it made my days and weeks that I was away from Sydney and away from rugby much easier to get through. So on the flip side of that, obviously coronavirus hasn't been the best to a lot of people, and a lot of people struggle through it. But on the flip side of it, I'm sure there's a lot of people like myself who've learned to be resilient, learned that self-discipline of training by themselves and learning to do things by themselves. And obviously it's temporary, things getting better. Obviously now playing club rugby, training with the Waratah, stuff like that's all back on. Although obviously you can't have the crowds and stuff, but the initial actions and stuff are there. So I obviously struggled a lot through isolation, but obviously building on to better things and stuff from now. So that's probably my kind of story about it all. But I hope everyone's going all right and learning to adapt to this new kind of world that we're in at the moment. So thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hugh, for sharing that with us. And we do have, if you see actually at the bottom of your screen, there's a little panel next to the chat that says Q&A. So if at any point over the next little while a question pops into your mind, please pop one in there. And I just want to say thanks to you, because when I hear someone like you talk about the word resilience, it makes me really inspired, because I feel like, especially in year 12, the word resilience gets thrown around so much that we can lose sight of what it actually means. And to me, what it means is learning new stuff and learning new skills. And sometimes we don't learn those if we don't face challenges. So resilience isn't never facing a challenge or never feeling down. It's finding new ways to move through those struggles when we do. So I'm sure there's plenty of people that are keen to hear even more about how you built those skills. So we'll let those questions start to build up while I throw over to Sharni to share a little bit about her journey and her 2020.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. This has been so awesome so far. So Batyr, you're doing a wonderful job, and Positive Rugby, this is what it's about, having these conversations. So my story, I'm originally from Batyr, 1,500 people in a small community down in the Snowy Mountains. I was an 8-year-old kid when I first said in the living room of my auntie's house that I would be an Olympian, and I had a lot of people's opinions sort of thrown my way with that statement. And I guess as a kid, you think that there's going to be a lot of positives in that, but there were a lot of sort of negatives towards me, saying, oh, you will never make it, you won't get there. And I think that's where I first adapted to my little slogan of I'll show you. So in everything I do, I just think to myself, I'll show you. So that's sort of where my journey has gotten me to, with getting to be a gold medalist. My whole career has been, I will show you how it's going to be done. And so I only started playing rugby when I was 20, so 2008. So women's rugby wasn't really heard of back in the day. We used to do a lot of fundraising. We would stop at the sets of lights and window wash, all those things, just trying to get to tournaments. And there would be people saying that women don't play rugby. Well, I can tell you right now that women do play rugby, and they go out there and they play just as hard as the men. And we have a gold medal to show for it, and I am going to show you it right there. So there are a lot of stereotypes in the world, right? It just takes your mindset on how to be able to solve it. That became a problem for me, and now I learn how to solve those problems. And those skills throughout that whole career have really helped me in able to do what I've been able to get through in this 2020. It's been quite a roller coaster for me, to be honest. Being told that the Olympics were cancelled firstly, but finding out that they had been cancelled on the TV, not from anyone else, from the news, the same way that every other person had been told. To then maybe 10 minutes later jumping on a Zoom call with Rugby Australia to tell us that it had then been postponed. So that was, a dream of going, okay, well, now it's being cancelled. Now I have to sort of gather myself, because I am the oldest in the team, and retirement is creeping up on me, and that could be my last Olympics. Well, it would be my last Olympics. To think that it had been cancelled, so the mind starts ticking and thinking of ways on how to problem solve that. To then go, oh, phone call, you're on a Zoom, it's been postponed. So you go back onto that roller coaster of a little bit of hope, and to then problem solve that, okay. And to where we get to now, I guess, is it's going to go ahead. There might not be people to be able to support, family members, things like that. There's just so many ifs, buts, whats, whys that are out of my control. And that's when things in your head start to really take take place, right? You start thinking too much, and because they're out of your control, it's actually put it back on myself and internalize and say, what can I control here right now? What is the moment? Live the moment right now, and what does that look like? And I guess that's what's helped me sort of get through this. And as I said, I've had my ups and downs. I've jumped on the chocolate wagon that I don't normally jump on. I've jumped on the alcohol wagon that I don't jump on either. But that's me being able to then cope with those moments to go, okay, I've dipped into that. That's not me. I'm finding myself in this moment, and I've really been able to get myself out. And I've been really proud of being able to do that, because life is just about solving those problems. And it doesn't matter whether you're a gold medalist, an athlete, Olympian, all those titles that I have, I'm still an everyday human that goes through things that other people go through. Sometimes it's at a much higher level, and it's got so much more risk involved in it, and resilience and sacrifice, all those things that come to mind as being an Olympian. But at the same time, if you could put yourself as being an athlete and what they go through, I think that anyone can definitely go through it. But yeah, my journey's been pretty tough for 2020. Not being able to play rugby, that's my identity, right? That's how I found who I am on that rugby field, because I've got people around me that support me, encourage me, know who I am, the real person, the real Sharni, because when you're vulnerable, that's when the real Sharni comes out. And if you're not able to share your story and be vulnerable, you won't have too many people staying really close in your corner. You actually have to be able to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in those moments, and sometimes you just need that little push. So having that close circle to give you that push really can help you either sink or swim, and I choose to swim. So that's my little story.
Thank you so much, Sharni, for sharing that with us. Really touched on that idea of what resilience looks like again. Again, resilience isn't never being in the hole. It's finding those ways that work for us to move out of it and to move through it. And we are seeing some questions start to come through, and I'd love to start asking some of them. But the first thing people want to know, and it's going to come your way, Hugh, and I think whether we're elite sports people or someone just trying to do a sit-up, how did you stay motivated to train on your own and being away from people?
As I said, I really struggled with it, but about halfway through isolation, I started. Obviously, I was talking to my mates and stuff from rugby, and I'd be like texting them, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to the gym now." So I'd be like, "Oh well, if they're going to go train now, or if they're going to do some fitness now, then I'd go and do it." So I knew that while I was training, although I was by myself, I knew that there was other people who I was friends with who I knew were training and doing the same thing as me, which obviously made it a lot easier to think, oh, well, if I'm training and he's training, we're training at the same time, doing the same stuff, just not physically there doing it together. But yeah, I found that I suppose made it easier to, if I knew other people, and obviously that's the competitive streak in me being like, oh, well, if they're training, then I need to be as well. So that was definitely what helped me to stay motivated. But obviously, as I said, I did struggle with it as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that idea of building that connection and building those supports, even when we can't be near each other, has been really helpful for lots of aspects of COVID. I know I've been on the Zoom workouts more than I normally have as well. So I feel like that connectedness can be really helpful in all areas of our life. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that little tip. Sharni, I've got one for you. You spoke quite a lot about your own journey, but as we know, you're also the captain of a team. So how did you support others while you were going through this journey yourself?
Well, it's pretty easy to support others when you're in the same boat. yeah, people have different stories and things, but when you've got a common goal, everybody feels a little bit of loss with that, that our goal wasn't going to be achieved. The Olympics had been cancelled. And I guess as a captain, I just sort of be a human being, right? Like everyone thinks that there's a lot of pressure to be a captain. For me, I've got some really great girls that are amazing, but you've also got the younger girls as well that haven't been through that mental toughness of where they've just been slogged, and you have to find something. So when you're really running and you're feeling tired, you're feeling fatigued, you just got to find that little bit extra. Everyone talks about 110%. You know, you've got to find that little 1% to try and get there. And I guess I use that analogy for sort of your mindset as well, right? So, yeah, okay, we just got to find that 1% that makes us happy, that 1% that, you know, is going to get us back to that Olympics. And that was that, yeah, it was cancelled, but now it's postponed. So it's one word that we had to focus on. Cancelled to being postponed means postponed, there's some hope. We spoke about that tonight, that if we have that little bit of hope, we can problem solve and try and get ourselves to that destination. So that's sort of how we adapted that.
Awesome. I love that idea of finding that common ground, because we are actually, even though it's impacting us in different ways, we are all experiencing this year together, and we are all one community going through this tough time together. And I love that simple reframe from cancelled to postponed. Finding little ways to get that hope is a really, really good tool to help us build that resilience when things are really, really tough. And again, lots of similar themes coming up. So Hugh, you spoke a lot about that routine, right down to like when you eat breakfast in the morning, or like when we get to work, or when we set aside time for different things. And I think there's so many things we can't control at the moment. So finding those things that we can through routine is going to be really, really helpful. And Sharni, you mentioned it too. There is a bit of an elephant in the room sitting here in the question section. Sharni, it is for you. Someone would love for you to tell us how hard it was to win a gold medal. What would your top tips be for someone like me who's just starting out on the gold medal journey?
Oh, mate, it was easy. Well, it was a 20-year dream, right? So I was an 8-year-old kid. So it was a process of all those things. My parents that supported me and drove me everywhere. The Batyr community that really rallied behind me to get me there. You know, family support, friends, all those things are what enabled me to get there through experiences. But I guess you're probably talking about the training side of things. And yeah, that's hard physically and mentally. You go to some really dark places and you talk to yourself quite a lot, whether it's inside your head or outside of your head. And you just got to continue to remind yourself, what do you want to achieve? And I guess for me, it was visualization. As an 8-year-old, I visualized myself being on the podium every single day, and I continue to do that. I probably still will when I'm, you know, old and grey and sitting in a wheelchair going, yep, that's the Olympics. But I mean, the hard part is not the winning of it, it's the getting there through the physical and mental side of things. So yeah, definitely hard, but as said, like there's a common theme going on tonight, and that's, you know, surrounding yourself with good people and making sure that you're in control of it. So I was in control of that dream, and that's what made it a bit easier for me, because when we walked out there on that field, we had already known we had won the gold medal because we put in all the hard work down in Waratah Academy sport beforehand. So if that answers it properly, but it was hard, but it was easy.
I'm not sure the person who asked that's intention, whether they were talking about the 20-year dream or the literal try scoring, first try scorer for Australia in that game. But Yeah, and I love the shout outs you give to the people around you consistently. I think you've been incredibly balanced in sharing what you have control of and the role that people around you play in that journey as well. We spoke a little bit about the balance of that physical toughness and the mental toughness. I wanted to throw to you, Hugh, because we've got a question here about how much do pro players spend on the mental side of things, and has it helped you in this time?
Yeah, a lot actually, especially here at the Waratahs. I'm sure Sharni can talk about what they're doing with Rugby Australia, but the Waratahs are like really intent on breaking down the stigma that rugby is such a macho sport, and that like mental health isn't really talked about and stuff. There's a program here, the Batyr program, which is solely for professional rugby players and their family and their friends, where you obviously have consultations and you go and see psychologists and stuff. But I think there's a massive focus on it, especially because everyone's so tight knit and so close with each other because you spend so much time together. But yeah, they're definitely trying to break down that stigma that it's not spoken about, and obviously that's why like the Waratahs do things like these seminars to try and break down the idea that it's not something that's not talked about. It's now a part of professional sport, and it's something that professional sport endorses being spoken about and stuff. So yeah, does that answer the question? Yeah,
it does. That's so cool that there is a renewed focus in breaking down that stigma, and part of positive mental health is just having those conversations about it and them going. I wanted to do a little whip around to end this part of the conversation before we wrap up. I'll start at the top with you, Sharni, then we'll go Hugh, then Ben. Just one way you take charge of your mental health and one thing you love doing in your downtime.
So take charge by going into the ocean. So the salt water, as soon as I dip my head under, I just feel one with myself again. I feel like all the negativity is just washed away. And then in my downtime, I actually use an app called Champion's Mind, and it's for athletes to go through and do all the sort of scenarios of putting yourself in a position to visualize it. And that's where I sort of picked up my kicking analogy, which was I think Sydney Sevens was pretty big for me because I missed a kick right in front of the posts, and I've come up with a way of getting through that, and that's like scrunch it up, throw it away like it's a piece of paper, and so that's sort of helped me in my downtime to sort of still do rugby, but it's also a way of just being able to get through life.
Love that as well. All right, Hugh, one thing you do to take charge of your mental health?
I love going back to my farm back in the country. Just go back there for a couple of days, just reset the mind, reset my body, just take it easy, just calm down, stuff like that. So yeah, and then in my downtime, I just hang out with my mates from footy, mates from school, chill out, watch Netflix, like just don't do much. Like, I like just getting away from footy for a bit and just being not normal, but just doing nothing, I suppose you'd say. Yeah, just taking it easy.
Awesome. That's a good way, stepping away. Both of you have spoken about ways to step away from footy for a bit, which is cool. And obviously that's been a helpful thing to have all those things outside of footy this year as well.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your stories, Sharni and Hugh, and to Ruth for facilitating that. Just really important that we're able to have a conversation about mental health, and it was great hearing from these two about how they've dealt with some pretty tough times over the last 12 months. So I hope you go out there, have some conversations, ask people if they're okay, and look after your mental health. And if there is anyone that's struggling, that really needs to reach out for support, I'll put up a number here that you can give a call to now, and look after your mates, look after yourself.